Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Credit and Conversation. Very special episode for everyone today. We're joined by none other than Dave Gibbons. Dave is one of the most legendary names you could find in comics. He's, of course, one of the creative minds behind Watchmen, which is being adapted into big screen, into animation. Of course, the Emmy Award-winning television series that spun out of it as well. He's also the author and creator behind the originals. You may have even seen some of his other works, such as Kingsman, which originally began life as the Secret Service, which he did with Mark Millar. And also he's contributed some of the most essential stories to the Superman lore as well, such as For the Man Who Has Everything. Did you catch the Doctor Who Christmas special last year with the Sky Beast? And that was also outside Star Beast was one of his adapted stories as well. So it was such an honour for Dave to take time out and to speak not just with myself, but he also graciously permitted our students and members of TASQ Art, that's Tala Academy of Sequential Art, Ireland's premier academy towards sequential art design and production, aka comic book school, and he was able to permit them to sit in as well. And that was a great appreciation on our part, and really enjoyed this conversation. Hope you do too as well. And so without further ado, I pass over now to Mr. Dave Gibbons on Credit and Conversation.
Awesome. Dave Gibbons, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. You just saying before the recording, the sun's still out as well where you are, so catching the last of the autumn sun.
Yeah, it's very nice actually at the moment, and it's going to get dark quite quickly because, as we were also mentioning, we've changed the clocks, so we're going to be plunged into winter gloom. So.
Yeah, that's the joys that we have here. A lot of our students attend online from different countries. So that was one of the benefits you were saying about Zoom. Everyone was like going on Zoom, and we've kept the benefit to stay connected. But now we've spent about 6 weeks getting used to our timetable, and now we'll throw it out the window for everyone to reschedule. But thanks so much again for the opportunity. And just to kick things off, I think we briefly met many moons ago at the International Comics Expo down in Birmingham. So Shane Chesby, yeah, you did a fantastic masterclass. I was literally just attending, but it stayed with me. Even when at the time I didn't know I was going to become a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first began teaching in animation, but at that class, you did this amazing exercise where you had everyone draw an eye. Just you said, draw an eye. Then you put up an image of an eye and had everyone draw from the reference. And it was like the same artist, each person, but when we drew from the reference, how it transformed, the similarities, and the drawing a single line and dividing it in three. That was, and you said that's the dexterity you need. That's all you need to be able to be an artist. And it just stayed with me. And was teaching or lecturing, is that anything that you've ever really considered, like that you'd be, because you do a lot of talks, like you did a lot of talks at conventions on ice, but yourself, you seem to be self-taught. Am I correct in your art background?
Yeah, I mean, my art background is non-existent. I learned to draw just by copying comics and copying illustrators that I liked. I then moved on and did a bit of life drawing when I was sort of 17, 18. And I just kind of showed you a little bit of the rest of my studio. I've got probably every book on how to draw and how to draw comics that's ever been published. I haunt used bookstores as well to find books on drawing from the 20s and the 30s and even Victorian times, when they had a really sort of, what should we say, a classic way of learning to draw. So I think whatever lectures I've done have been really little bits of information and things that I pulled together from what I've read. I have no memory at all of the dividing the line into three, but it is a very good exercise. In fact, I remember I was going to be on a long plane journey once to Malaysia with a friend of mine, and he said, it's going to be such a long flight, it's going to be so boring. He said, I know what, Dave, you could teach me to draw. That was what we could do to pass the 13 hours on board this plane. So I said, well, the thing is, Kush, I could probably teach you how to draw in about 20 minutes. But then it would probably take about 20 years to learn how to see. And that's really the thing. The only dexterity you need is the dexterity you have to write your name or to write in Roman letters, and then to be able to divide things into 2 and 3 and 4. And that really is it. It's a fairly simple thing, but the actual seeing is the difficult bit, and it's the bit that consumes you forever. And it's the thing that you can't teach, you can only practice. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And with regards to your tools as well, because at the time you was using I think it was a Cintiq, and that, like, at the time, it was like, that was like really top of the range. Tech still is to this day. And there's a lot of talk around like use of 3D references and stuff. And you had this really great way of explaining how, but it's just another tool as well. So the message you were giving there, it's pretty much like we can all draw, everyone can draw if you're willing to pick up a pen. But some people then might talk around like, what about the tools they should be using? Is there any difference in your book between pen and paper or drawing digital, or how would you recommend someone using their tools today as an artist?
Well, I think the skills you need to draw, all you really need is some typing paper or some printer paper and half a dozen pencils. That's how you really can learn to draw. And everything on top of that is just another tool. I mean, most cartoonists search for the magic pen nib. They always want to know when they meet an artist, they admire what sort of pen nib they use or what pen they use, as if somehow that is like a totem that will enable them to have the powers of the person who's told them the instrument they use. But that clearly isn't so at all. And really, the Cintiq is a wonderful thing to draw on, and it's great, particularly for doing layouts and rough drawings and stuff like that, where you've got the infinite malleability that any image concocted on a computer has got. But at the end of the day, it won't draw for you. It will enable you to bring in things like three-dimensional models. It means you can have your reference there readily available. But it won't do the work for you. And if you try just to use raw computer imagery, it always stands out like a sore thumb. You still need to see the maker's mark, even if it's a digital mark.
Absolutely. And from your own experience, getting into comics, was that something that was always the dream goal for you? Or what was it that led you into that field? What was the comic that got you hooked onto the medium?
No, the only thing I ever wanted to do was to draw comics. I wasn't interested in drawing for its own sake. It was, how do you tell the story? How do you draw well enough and consistently enough that the reader gets lost in the story? One of the worst things that can happen is for the reader to, as it were, see the artist indulging themselves. There was one of the famous Hollywood moguls who... What was the thing he said? Oh yeah, when he'd get a screenplay in and there'd be some really sort of real flourishes of language, he would go, "I smell a writer." And it's the same with drawing. You don't want to smell the artist. You don't want to stop and think, "Wow, isn't he a really great draftsman? Isn't that wonderful the way he's drawn that scene or the textures that he's given to this?" If you stop to do that, you've driven them out of the story. And that's the reason why, in my opinion, some of the best comics artists are not the photorealistic ones. They're the ones who actually draw with a sort of an inner consistency, that isn't trying to make you think what a wonderful artist, what a wonderful draftsman is. But you've got to get lost in the story, so you forget that there is a writer and you forget that there is an artist. So, there are lots of draftsmen in comics who do sort of really photorealistic stuff. But that to me is actually going the wrong way. The really great comic artists to me, people like Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko, or British artists like Frank Bellamy or Frank Hampson, their work is unmistakable. It's like everything is in their language and it's always consistent, and there's never anything that jars or pulls you out of the story. And it's interesting that a lot of those artists are the ones who have had to work really quickly. I mean, Kirby in particular would draw 3 or 4 pages a day. But what that meant was it was coming from his subconscious. He really didn't, drawing at that rate, he didn't have time to put any filters on it or to go back and doodle it and worry about it. He just drew it as he imagined it. And that's why comic artists like that have such a tremendous power behind them and an energy and a universality, which I think is what you really should be looking for.
Wow, brilliant. And for yourself then, how did you what was your first exposure to American comics then, growing up? Because you would have started with UK comics, but were American comics readily available to you when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me.
Yes.
I was just about the right age and of the right generation to really appreciate American comics. You think of people like myself, obviously, Brian Boland, Kevin O'Neill, Mick McMahon to a degree, Gary Leach. We all grew up reading American comics, which started to be imported into the UK in the very late 50s in 1959. So we were all at that kind of tender preteen age where we were bowled over by the bright colours and the promise of a different civilization, almost like a kind of Babylon or something across the seas, where there were these wonderful things like Schwinn bicycles or Daisy BB guns or Tootsie Rolls, or you could go to Palisades Park. You know, the whole American culture thing to me was tremendously attractive and against the sort of the greyness and the somewhat drabness of Britain in the 50s. You know, it was this sort of incredible charge of colourful adventure and promise. The very first superhero comic I got, my granddad bought it for me when we were in Woolworths, and I've still got it. And it was a Superman comic, and it was Superman in a cave with a chest full of treasure, and Lois Lane looking in the entrance of the cave going, no, surely Superman cannot be a miser. And I thought, this is pretty good. You know, this attractive woman's in love with Superman, and he's so strong and good looking, and he's got all this money as well. This is pretty good. You know, this is something to aim for. But from that point on, I just collected and read American comics. I still got British comics as well. But it was really the notion of working for the States that was most attractive to me. And just to compress it a little bit, I stopped collecting comics when I was in my late teens, as I think a lot of people do. They've got other things to occupy them, and which are even more attractive than colour comic books. But I remember starting to buy comics again when I was maybe 20. And the job that I had meant that I got lots of time out of the office, and I would haunt the secondhand bookshops for back issues of comics. But it seemed to me by that time that it was an impossibility that I could ever break into American comics, because there was 3,000 miles of cold Atlantic Ocean. All the people who drew comics were obviously in the mold because of names like Esposito and Buscema and Giella. You know, it was obviously a completely closed shop. There's no way an English kid could break in. Until in one of these secondhand bookstores, I bought a copy of Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., that was drawn by an artist called Barry Smith. And Stan Lee mentioned in his Soapbox, his editorial page, that, you know, this issue was being drawn by a young British newcomer, Barry Smith. And I thought, it's possible. I don't know how he did it, but there's obviously an English guy, young guy like me, who's working in American comics. So there is a way to get there. And I think that then inspired me to really seriously give it a go. One of the first things I did, because obviously I then had it in my head that, right, when I get on the plane and go to New York, what I need to do is to show them I can draw at least as well as Barry Smith. So I got the story that Barry Smith had done and completely redrew it, big size on proper artboard and everything. And it's a long story, but eventually that led me to meet people who had contacts in the States. And when I went across to the States, I knew some people. And also, I'd had enough stuff published in Britain that I knew that I could do it to a professional standard. And I really then took every job I could get to get where I wanted to be.
What was the experience like being in America for the first time? 'Cause, I went over with friends one year for one of the New York Comic Cons, and we were amazed to see the water towers on top of the building.
Oh,
We were
yeah.
like, we were like looking up like real tourists for yourself, having seen it on the page. I know, of course, and on the screen with film and TV. Did that really inform how you went on to tackle like city landscapes then, or what was that sensation like for the first time you stepped over America?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it'd always been this kind of famed, distant Babylon. And to get there, and yeah, when I checked into the hotel, I remember clearly looking out of the window and seeing the very water towers that you're talking about, which are the water towers that Spider-Man would swing across and fight people in, and also on the sidewalk there were the fire hydrants, these big metal things with nuts and bolts on them. And again, those were street dressing in all the American comics I'd see. So yeah, that sort of stuff, that atmosphere, that kind of mundane reality of it was still really exciting to me. The thing I was slightly disappointed at, that there weren't comics everywhere. You'd see a newsstand and they'd maybe have 6 or 7 comics, and the rest of it was just the kind of magazines you get in the UK. So that was a little bit disappointing. I should mention, by the way, that I redrew Barry Smith's story, but I didn't draw it even as well as Barry Smith drew it. So it was a long way from there. But that was the thing that made me think it was possible. So I think, like they say, when opportunity knocks, open the door, and that really was opportunity knocking for me.
Absolutely. And speaking of opportunity knocking, of course, like you've had the type of career that anyone would give the arm and leg for in comics. You've done some of the most, if not the fundamental comic book within the genre. But with regards to cinema and adaptations as well, you've been involved in some like big cinematic adaptations. Both, I think Watchmen's been adapted live action and animation now, and TV. There's also the Kingsman franchise as well. How has that experience been? Were you involved in any of the adaptation experiences? Was that a new dimension, seeing how Hollywood operates for you?
Wow. Yeah, and it's a big question. I mean, first of all, I was thrilled, or I have been thrilled, when stuff of mine has been adapted, because it's wonderful to think that people are interested enough and are willing to spend enough money to make these things happen. And I mean, they've been quite different experiences. Watchmen, we sold all the rights to back in the mid-'80s when we were drawing it, so it was completely out of our control. And it looked for a long time that nothing would be done with it. It's because, well, it was felt that it was unfilmable, but actually one of the producers of the movie that was eventually made of it said that it wasn't so much that, it was that it was unfinanceable because there weren't any well-known people in it. It was an ensemble piece rather than having a hero. People weren't familiar with the characters at all. But what had happened with comics is they'd taken a turn from doing Watchmen, that they'd become more adult in tone, and they referenced old comics as well. And people who had seen the Batman movies sort of got the thing that Batman had a Batcave, and there was Robin, and there was the giant dinosaur and the big penny and everything. And they were ready for it when it came on screen. So it wasn't until the mid 2000s that enough people were kind of familiar enough as grown-ups with superhero comics that Watchmen could come along, and they'd immediately get it that, yeah, there's these costume characters and, they fight crime and it's all gone wrong and it's all turned very dark. But, it's a question of timing with that. And although I didn't have to be involved with it at all and they could have made a movie without consulting me, they did consult me. They did treat me very, very well, and I was able to see it being filmed. And we got to go to a couple of premieres, which was just great, to put some fancy clothes on and go to a really good party. So I was thrilled with it. And, it's not the Watchmen movie isn't a perfect movie. I think it's got some sublime moments in it, some incredibly good moments. Others don't work quite so well. But it was a hell of a thing to have to adapt. And I think Zack Snyder, who was the director of it, did an amazing job. I was even more thrilled by the HBO TV series, which came out a few years ago, because that was not so much a sequel, which I hadn't been in favour of with the original Watchmen comic, but it was like an extrapolation. It was set so far in the future that it was kind of almost unrelated to the Watchmen movie. And again, I was treated very nicely there. They invited me over to Los Angeles, and I got to go in the writer's room, and I got to see a preview of it. And then I did an appearance at New York Comic Convention. So I was really quite, it was a thing that I really, really enjoyed. Kingsman was a bit different because, Mark Miller, who was the writer, had quite a lot of success with other features of his, other comics of his that had become movies, like Kick-Ass, for instance. And we had more control over it, and we got more money from it as well, I should say. And again, it was a thing where I had very little involvement with it. I did briefly go to the studio and see one of the scenes being shot, but it was a much more uninvolved relationship. But it was a great movie, and it did tremendously well. And friends of mine who aren't comic fans, really, really enjoyed it. So that's been great. I've still got a couple of things out there as well. There's Martha Washington, which is a thing that I did with Frank Miller, who I believe you had as a guest or a speaker.
We did indeed. We had him over here tracing some of his Irish roots as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We traced him down to County Antrim, so he's further up north in the country. But yeah, he was talking a little bit about Martha Washington as well. I don't know if we talked on record of it. It was in one of our conversations, but that's like such an astounding piece of work as well. That was produced, and I was just wondering, like, do you feel if you guys were to tackle that story, like if it was to tackle today, how do you think in current climate that you feel would have been as receptive with you guys making the story, even though it is your story, just given the character as well? Because you were saying that's in development, so hopefully there's more to come, is there?
Yeah, well, I mean, the astonishing thing about Martha is how prescient it is. It's got like the mad US president in it, and that's everything going very, very wrong with the American dream. And I, as I've seen the real life unfold, I've thought, my God, this is exactly as Frank and I had it 30 years ago. It's the same thing. And Martha is, as you said previously, I have been lucky enough to work on a lot of the most well-known American and UK characters, Superman, Batman, Doctor Who, Green Lantern, Dan Dare. I've been really, really lucky. But of all the characters that I've been involved with, the one who's most come to life for me, and I think it's true with Frank as well, was Martha Washington. There's something about her. She's such a pure hero. And she's the opposite of what you normally get in superhero comics. She's not bombastic. She's not a muscly Amazon. She's just an ordinary woman, and she finds herself in this impossible world, and all she wants to do is try and behave in a way that her mum would be proud of her. And it to me, it's, well, I think that it's such an emotional. There are some wonderful emotional moments in there, which I give great credit to Frank for. I mean, Frank wrote the whole thing to the extent that we kind of worked on Martha on and off in between other projects we were doing, but we never finished the story until out of the blue, a script arrived, which was the final Martha story. And I read it, and I actually didn't cry, but my eyes started to well up. And I thought, my God, that's incredible. And I think it was so much of its time that I think it would have been a mistake to try and carry it on or to revisit it too much in light of what's happened since. I think that's the magic of it, that it crystallizes something permanent. It's at the bottom, honestly. Yeah, there is something there which was a statement which I think, to finish it in the way we did, made it feel completely right. So I hope at some point, it's been in development for a long, long time. Things never happen quickly in Hollywood. but it would be great to see that as a TV series or a movie. I think it'd make a great TV series, really. But at the moment, all the I's need to be dotted and the T's need to be crossed.
No, absolutely. And for yourself, a lot of people are saying how there seems to be a migration from cinema to TV. Like more projects are getting greenlit for the prestige TV format, HBO, or it's going to a streamer as well. And some people are thinking maybe the box office cinema is getting too kind of a action orientated, or it's more the spectacle that driving people in, and then for the story they're going looking at the TV, or not even the TV now. Now it can be a phone or a tablet now how they're consuming it. But for yourself, if any, like, it doesn't have to be specifically Martha Washington or anything that you've worked on, if you would see it adapted, how, having seen it both in film and TV, what's your preferred form of adaptation would you like to see? Would you like to see more of your stuff adapted as long-form TV? Or do you enjoy the cinematic experience more? Or is it just you leave it in the hands of the director?
Well, I think, Martha goes on a long journey. She goes from being this kid in the Cabrini Green ghetto, Chicago, to literally saving the world, and then beyond that. So it's a long journey, and I actually think that it would fit, the streaming serialized way of making films better than as a sort of feature film or as a feature film. That could work as well. I could see it working in a franchise way. But I suppose I've always thought of it just as it was done episodically, that it would be something that would appear episodically and give Arthur, a good long journey to go on and to get a lot of the background colour and everything into it that we invented. So, yeah, my preference would be for a TV streaming multi-part thing, but, I'd just be interested to see how it turns out.
Oh, absolutely. So would everyone, absolutely. And with regards to when you start a project for the first time, it's something myself and the students kind of go back and forth on, is the intimidation of the blank page, as it were, when you're about to begin. And as you mentioned, like, you've worked on some of the biggest characters, if not the biggest characters anyone can work on. For yourself, was there ever a moment where you kind of pause, like you said, your first comic was Superman, and then you actually go on to draw Superman? Did you ever, like, in a moment go, this is big, or are you just excited to get into the story, to commit that to the page? Like, how's your process to that, as it were?
Well, one thing you have in comics which helps you lose the fear of the blank page is the even greater fear of blowing the deadline. So you might not be happy with what you've done, but the thing is, you have actually done it. The thing that I've always tried to do is to avoid the blank page. I would never start off with a piece of illustration board and a pencil and start drawing at the top left-hand corner. My way of working is really to sort of focus in. So what I do, I'll read the script, which is normally a typewritten, printed script. And if it isn't printed, if it's just on screen, I will print it out because I like to have the tangible thing. And then I would read it to get the sense of it, and then read it maybe again to make sure I completely understand, and then go through it like with a biro or an old pencil or something, and just do whatever flashes into my mind as a page layout or a little detail or a way of staging something, but doing it without any sense that I'm doing finished artwork or that I'm going to be tied to it at all. And once I've read the whole thing and got a kind of a misty, distant vision of how it could be, I would then thumbnail the whole thing, which means that I would do on little kind of rectangles that were maybe a couple of inches tall. I would draw little miniature versions of the page, not worrying about anatomy or perspective, but just getting the general feel of it down as a composition. And then I'd work that up to the point that I'd actually ink it in, so I was committed to draw certain things a certain size in a certain place. And at that point, I would move on to the bigger board, and I would either, with a projector, blow up the artwork, or on the screen. Of course, you can just resize it any amount you like. But I'd blow my little thumbnails up into full-size pages and start to draw them, referring back to the thumbnails. And it's almost like if you've got the thumbnails and you squinted at them, you've got the finished page. All you're really doing is focusing in. You made the decisions of what goes where, how big things are, which direction they're going in. And then it sounds like I'm being flipped, but then all you've got to do is draw it. Then the drawing of it is actually the easy part, because it's smaller, granular, less important detail that only when it's conglomerated together is a statement of what you wanted to do. So, yeah, the thing to do is to avoid the blank page at all costs. Avoid it. And again, as to the way I'd work, there's a certain kind of breathing in and breathing out, or yin and yang thing, where you start off very rough, then you tighten it up into a thumbnail. Then you let it breathe as the full-size thing on the page and keep the design the same, but get more expressive with it. Then you nail down what you draw, and you draw more tightly and put the details in. And then if you've got a really nice tight drawing where everything's been worked out and you're completely happy with it, you then can ink it in, put in the areas of black, get the line weights, again referring back to your little thumbnail. And everything happens at the point in the process that it should. You can try and kid yourself when you're penciling it that if it doesn't turn out right, you're going to fix it when you ink it. You never are going to fix it when you ink it. You fix it in the pencils. Then when you ink it, you're not likely to make so many mistakes. If you do make a mistake, you can have another go at it. You can draw over it. You can erase it and redraw. But I find by doing that, by starting with a roadmap and having it come into focus and oscillating between tightness and expressiveness, you come up with something that's consistent. And that's the main thing about it. That was one of the main concerns with Watchmen. Not that I could draw it, because I knew I could draw it if I took enough trouble, but that I wouldn't be consistent, that you look at the last page and it would look at a completely different artist than the first page. So I set myself the way that I wanted it to look. And I did like a page 0, which had the feel. And I'd make sure that everything I drew fitted with what had come before. So again, you've got a plan, you've got a big scheme, and then just draw it,
See, that's amazing. It was like, and there's something you mentioned earlier on about Jack Kirby that's struck in my head as well, because there's this story of how he would sit down before his desk and people would see him and he would draw straight from memory. So he wouldn't necessarily do rough anything. It was like a print, as some people described it. His hand would go down. And someone just asked him once, because he would do like so many pages a day and everything. And they said, like, how can you do this? And he just looks at me and goes, how? Because I have a mortgage to get paid. And half he goes, there's another page. The guy was like, oh, a genius and a machine as well. How he took his approach.
Yeah.
And with regards to just so, obviously you're known for like as being the artist in so much of your projects as well, but you're also a storyteller as well. Like you're telling the story, you're telling your own stories. How do you feel, like, how do you perceive yourself in the role? How do you like that, perception, that label be to you, if there is one? Like, is it Dave Gibbons artist or Dave Gibbons, storyteller, visual storyteller, along those lines? Do you have a split hairs over that, or is that something which...
Yeah, I think you actually unconsciously answered the question for me, which is I'm a storyteller. I sound a bit like David Brent going, I'm an entertainer, but I am essentially a storyteller. And on the spectrum of things, there are some artists who are wonderful draftsmen, but their storytelling is a bit shaky, and others who have really strong storytelling, but their final product is a bit shaky. But I've always thought I like to think of myself as being towards the storytelling end of it, because as I said earlier on, that's what really interests me about comics, the fact that with images, you're giving people an experience that they get lost in. But because I write as well, when I write, I can imagine very clearly what the pictures are going to be. And most of the artists, most of the writers that I've worked with, like Frank Miller, like Alan Moore, are really good artists in their own right as well. So they've got an idea of what can be drawn and what can't be drawn. The worst thing is to work with the kind of writer who has no real visual sense, and that can get quite difficult. They'll ask you to do things which are impossible, like showing, I don't know, 2 or 3 different things going on in the same panel. Like as he smashes through the window, he reaches for the gun on the sideboard, and over his shoulder we can see him looking at the villain. That isn't a picture, that's a page. So I think that even when I'm actually writing for myself, which I've done on a couple of occasions, I did a book called The Originals, I still wrote a full script for it. I didn't have to describe everything in such painstaking detail. But before I drew it, I wrote the whole thing out, so I knew what the balloons were going to be, what the captions were going to be, how many pictures on the page, and all that stuff. So yeah, I think I'm a storyteller who happens to have spent most of his career drawing other people's scripts, but possibly could have, written a few of the things to get other people to draw. The only thing I did discover, I mentioned the originals, is that what also characterizes my approach is I am a collaborator. I love to collaborate, and that really is the key to working with a writer. Is you should get a sense that it's a collaborative thing rather than you're being told what to do, or that you're not being told enough. So yeah, I think I would think of myself as a storyteller. And a collaborator and an entertainer as well.
Really. And I noticed your text, your biography, Confabulation. Am I pronouncing that correct, or did I get?
Yeah, Confabulation.
Confabulation. What struck me was you also recorded the audio for it as well, and I always loved that when the author also records the audio. I know Michael Uslan had done his as well, because I think you pick up more when you hear the person who wrote it speak it as well. How was that experience for you? Is that something you ever thought you would narrate a book that you've written yourself? How was that? Did you do it in a recording studio? Or is that something you could do remote? What's that experience like?
Well, when I wrote it, I had no idea that I would do an audio book of it, but I was aware that it was written in my voice. Indeed, somebody said to me, I think it was Garth Ennis, said to me that it was just like being in the pub with me and hearing me talk, which was what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be kind of to give a sense of my personality, or the way that I, again, probably tell stories, in this case, the story of my life. But the reality of it was I for about a week and a half, I think it took us all together, because it seems an easy thing just to read something out, but it's actually quite tiring. But the thing that I did find, that I found it really easy to read, because it was my voice. I didn't have to alter my modulation or my emphasis at all. It was exactly the way it would be anyway. And there was this very nice lady called Helen Quigley who does a lot of voiceover stuff, and she has a recording studio in her garden. It's like one of these porter cabin things that they lower into your back garden on a crane. And literally within that was a little soundproof area, like a cupboard. So I was in a cupboard, in a shed, in a garden down in Chelmsford, and waiting for the planes to go over, so that, we wouldn't pick up any bad sound at all. And also not running out of breath, or not going all croaky all of a sudden, which is the reason why you can't do much of it, because you do go a bit croaky. So it was a really interesting experience. Have you listened to the autobiography? Have you listened to it?
I've only got a snippet onto it, because it's still on my wish list, so I'm getting that one. Hopefully November it's coming in.
Because a few people I've mentioned it to said, it's really great. I had a really good week driving backwards and forwards to work, listening to you talking about comics. So it didn't make any money at all, but it was an interesting thing to do. And I was also, I thought, kind of had a whole second career, I think, because Helen quickly said to me, she said, the thing about you, Dave, is you're obviously reading it in your own voice, but you can actually read it. She said, you'd be surprised of how some people, even well-known actors, actually cannot just read what's on the page. They can't look at it and say what it says. So that I took that as a compliment, and who knows, it may be a whole new career opening up in front of me.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So I was saying to Frank when he was over as well, like, would he ever do like a podcast or something? And he actually, surprisingly enough, he actually had a concept and a unique idea, which I won't say because in case he goes ahead with it. But would that be something that you would ever entertain, like perhaps doing like podcasting in your future?
Well, I did think about it, and at one point I did have a short discussion with Frank about it, and I'm not sure what he told you, and obviously that's his business. But I mean, I just had this idea because I don't know if it would work as an audio podcast. It's weird to try and talk about a visual medium, pure words. But when us artists get together, what we talk about is, as I mentioned earlier, what sort of pen do you use? What kind of ink is the best? What's the best software on the computer? What kind of A3 printer have you got? You know, that's the sort of thing. And Will Eisner, way back in the creator of The Spirit, who I'm sure you're familiar with, he used to do a thing in his Spirit magazine called Shop Talk, where he would get another cartoonist to talk to him about how they work, what sort of pens, what sort of paper, their routine, their approach and everything. And I thought I would really love to do that. And I actually said to Frank that I had the intention to do that, and would he be a guest on that? And he said, absolutely, Dave, because he loves to speak about that as well. And again, one of the things, having worked in comics as long as I have, is by and large, everybody I've met I'm on good terms with, and would be quite happy for me to talk to them, and would relish carrying on the sort of conversation we have when we meet up in a pub anyway. But I've kind of put it on the back burner, but I'm really doing very little in the way of paying work these days, and I've got a little bit of spare time. And only the other day I was thinking it might be something that I could revisit. So what would be really great is if I get my one going, I could have Frank as a guest, and if he gets his one going, if he wants to, he could have me as a guest. So
Absolutely. No doubt. Trust me, that one, everyone be tuning in for that, especially because there's a lot. People love the process, hearing about the process, and it's the positive side of technology. It's that we can all connect so much more easier now. Conversation like this 15, 20 years ago would have involved maybe like hopping on a plane and all sorts of logistics. Now it's just plugging in the computer, which is fantastic. And it's been wonderful, this conversation, hearing you talk, because you've been covering so much what we've been addressing within our classes here as well. So it's always reassuring when we hear the experts echo what we've discussed. But I was just wondering, would it be okay with you if I ask any of the students if they have a question to come in?
Please feel free, be happy to.
Yeah, thank you. So over to the crowd then, to you guys. Just like in class, if any of you have a question, just use the raise the hand emoji and I'll be able to call upon you.
It's always the only thing that's worse than the blank page is the open mic.
Yeah. Okay, so we go over to Craig first and then Diego. Go ahead, Craig.
Hi, Dave. Nice to meet you. I'm just wondering, I've heard the story many times of you walking the pages of Watchmen over to John Higgins to get advice on colouring and like final draft. I just wonder, like, how far away literally was John Higgins from you doing that?
Well, I used to live in a town called St Albans in Hertfordshire in England. You can look it up on Google Maps. And John lived in a place called Luton, actually in Bedfordshire, but adjoining counties, maybe 10 miles away. So he would drive over, and his then wife would come over, and she and my then wife would have a glass of wine and a chat. Our two children were of similar age, my son and John's daughter. And me and John would repair to my studio, a much smaller studio than I have at the moment, have a glass of beer, shoot the shit, and you talk about colouring. So it was very comfortable, and John and I are friends to this day, and we've had many happy times together. So it was always a pleasure to see him.
Thanks so much.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Diego, do you want to go ahead?
There you go.
Well, sorry, Diego, I don't think your microphone connected. No worries.
I think your audio's on mute.
Hey, there you go, Diego.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
You mentioned that it takes 20 years to learn to see. What would be a pointer to see better so people can draw better or start the process?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch all that. Can you say again? Or
Yeah. You mentioned that it takes 20 minutes to learn how to draw,
yeah, that was just to get
or 20 years. Oh, yeah. But you said 20 years to learn how to see. Do you have any pointer how to see better?
look. I'm not trying to be flippant, but look.
I know.
I just think, oh yeah, it's a horse. Think, what is that thing? What is that bolt? What is that thing with the legs and how big is it? How does it work? And I mean, the thing that I do, and a lot of artists do this. I mean, I can draw, and to be honest with you, even while we've been having this chat, I'm looking and I'm actually almost doing drawings in my head of thinking of things that are in my visual field. So it becomes a habit. But, one key thing, because in comics, by and large, you're going to be drawing a lot of human figures, is to actually draw from life as much as you can. And I've come back to doing that. And now that I'm kind of retired, I go along with that with all the other old boys and old girls who sort of quite like drawing. And we go to a local hall every week or two, and we have a live model, and we draw the live model in a sort of 3-hour session. And I'm really enjoying that, because nearly everything I've ever drawn has been for money or for somebody else's approval or somebody else's commission. It's great just to sit and draw without any pressure, and not even show it to anybody. It doesn't even matter if it's a horrible rough drawing. Who cares, And that's actually where I've trained my seeing, is by doing that, by drawing whenever I can from what's around me, even if I haven't got a pencil, by actually analysing it in my head. So I think that's what I would say. And also probably thing that's very difficult is you draw quite easily. I used to be able to draw quite easily, and I found when I went to life class that I had difficulties because I'd had ingrained in me sort of shortcut ways to draw things, a shortcut way of drawing an eye without really ever looking at an eye. When I came to look, it was different. So sometimes it makes a big difference. No, what I'm trying to say is, even if you draw quite well, you could always draw better. You can always see more acutely, and you can always draw things more convincingly. So, I mean, it's the world around you. It's everything you can see, everything in your field of vision. Draw it or look at it and analyze it. And, there was this thing we said earlier about dividing a line into 3. Well, this is interesting with a horse. How long are its legs compared to the length of its body? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I see. It's got its weight on that leg. So that leg is off the ground. And it becomes quite forget trying to draw comics to earn money, be a comic book superstar. It's just a really amusing and entertaining way to spend your time when you've got nothing else to do. Does that make sense? I don't know.
It does. Thank you so much for answering. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Diego. And then we just have Alistair, and then I think we close out with Yaya. So Alistair, go ahead. What? Sorry, Alistair, your microphone doesn't seem to be connected as well.
Is that any better? Can you hear me?
So, yeah, you're here.
Great, no worries. Thanks a million, Dave, for speaking to us. Well, it's sort of a life drawing-ish question. Have you found yourself, because I would have read a lot of your work on 2000 AD and stuff as a kid, maybe Batman versus Predator and things like that. And I know that some of the entertainment designers that I maybe follow these days that would contribute to old franchises, but being done in a more modern kind of, they might be doing video games or something, but they all seem to have engineering degrees on the side and like automotive design sort of interests outside. But have you ever found that you've self-educated yourself to expertise on something that isn't directly drawing, but might be to do with the design of something, or motorbikes or something like that over the years? Does it happen to you by osmosis, maybe?
That's an interesting thing. Funnily enough, my stepdaughter's boyfriend is a car designer and he does incredible concept drawings of cars. And I've had many interesting chats with him about industrial design and stuff like that. He's a huge comics fan. I mean, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool to draw Formula One racing cars? And he's thinking, wouldn't it be cool to draw Batman? So we're all swimming in the same thing, really. I mean, one of the keys to drawing is that you really have to. You draw in 2D, you see in 3D and you draw in 2D. So everything you're doing is adapting dimensional reality to flat reality. And if you're doing product design or automotive design or anything that has to exist in the real world, you have to think three-dimensionally. So that skill translates very well to comic books. And I've done a bit of video game design and so on, and I usually enjoy it. And the reason I enjoy it is it tends to be, you're not doing a final, this has got to be the fun thing. You're drawing, things along the way. We could try this, we could try that. There's a possibility here, or that would be good to do this. And then you tend to be working collaboratively as well, where you'll get a Finnish artist, not from Finland, obviously, a finished artist is what I mean to say, who will take your designs and then make them into something special, and then it'll be 3D modeled and it'll be rendered. And so there's a great joy in doing that. And I've always thought in 3 dimensions, famously for me anyway, but in Watchmen, the intersection where there's the news vendor and the kid and the squid arrives and all that. I didn't build a model of it, but I drew a plan of it. So I knew in feet exactly how wide the road was, how big the newsstand was. And then when I came to draw it, I had the 3D thing in my head. There's something else that you probably can't see it, but in my trophy cabinet back there, I drew, Alan Moore wrote, and I drew a Superman story called For the Man Who Has Everything. And it's a very popular story. It's been reprinted God knows how many times. And it features an alien bad guy called Mongol. And for reference on Mongol, when I came to draw him, I looked at the comics he'd been in. And he'd been drawn a lot, full on, and a lot profile. The bit in the middle didn't quite work. What he had, what you could see on the front of him, what you could see on the side didn't quite work. So what I did was get some plasticine, and I actually built. I could go and try and get it, but the whole thing will probably fall over if I try and open the door. And I got some plasticine and I made a little model, Mongol's head, looking at the profile, looking at the foot on. And I actually had that on my table while I was drawing it. But the thing was, because I'd modeled it in 3D and thought about it so much, I didn't really have to look at the model because I'd internalized how it was in 3 dimensions, the bulk of it. So again, something like that is you have to do a lot with that in comics because things have to be drawn consistently and have to be drawn in different angles in different places. And again, it's a thing I might suggest if you have a thing you're having difficulty in drawing, make a little model book. Don't buy a $10,000 computer and ZBrush or something like that. Just go and get a little bit of plasticine or modeling clay and just build a little. I think they call it a maquette, a little model human. Is that what you want to know?
Really? Yeah, no, that was exactly the answer I had hoped for. So yeah, good, great.
Thank you, Peter. That's the question, yeah? What's wrong with you, Pete?
I think we have Yaya's next. Go ahead, Yaya.
Hiya.
Hiya, could you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Dave.
You're welcome.
I really resonated with the earlier story that you talked about, just coming to a new country and just going into the comic scene, which really resonates with me because that's my current situation at the moment. And I just wanted to ask you, I think, just for everyone as well, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to people who are looking to be storytellers within the comic scene, what would it be?
I don't know that there's one thing. I mean, I think it's very important to know what is the story and what isn't the story. And again, I've sort of educated myself by reading books about screenwriting, which is it's not the same as comics, but it's kind of similar. And I actually went along to a lecture given by a guy called Robert McKee, who's one of the gurus of screenwriting. And he's written a very good book. I think it's called Story. I think you also, it isn't a bad idea, even if you just want to write comics, to actually do little comics as you write them. I know that Alan Moore used to do that. He'd actually have a little notebook where he'd draw a page out. He'd never show it to the artist, but he would actually be visualizing it and make sure it worked. So that's quite an important thing to do with a story. And also one of the tips I would give, when I draw a panel in a story, one of the things I think about, both when I write it or draw it, is what is this picture about? In other words, is it about action? Is it about atmosphere? Is it about information? Is it about character? And have some idea of what the purpose of it is. Don't just let it run on and, we'll figure it out later. You know, that's a very good thing to have clearly in your head. And then, of course, what comes from that is, okay, if you want to draw, it's about emotion, let's say this particular panel, you've got to see somebody's emotion, so you've got to be close enough to them. You can see their facial expression or what their hands are doing. That's not going to be a long shot panorama. So thinking visually can help you create your story as well, because the meaning of everything has to become clear to you. And again, you can reverse engineer things as well. I mean, you could say, look at something that Frank Miller's written and drawn and write a script from that. Think how you would describe or how you would make sure that the artist knew what you wanted them to draw. So yeah, that's a possible way to go. And again, if you're handed a script that somebody else has written, even if they might not have been aware of it, you have to look at it and look at a picture and think, what is this picture about? So that will help you to draw it as well. So that's my number one piece of advice.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot, I think, especially since there's a couple of studios now, including 2080, that's opening these, I guess, talent competitions, and they give you, because I'm participating from the artist side, they do give you script to draw like 5 pages from, and yeah, I think this might help a lot. Thank you so much.
Good. Have fun with it.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I think that's. Do we have questions for everyone wants to ask? Yeah. Fantastic.
Was John's your last John? Yeah, there must be a question you thought, God, if we had some comic artist on here, this thing I'd really like to know about comics is.
It will come as soon as we hang up. That's always the way. Yeah.
Of course, I think the French have an expression for it. It's called l'esprit de l'escalier, the spirit of the staircase. It's the thing you realize as you slam the door and walk down the stairs, think, shit, that's what I should have said. But no.
Oh yeah, that's pretty much me every other day, I think.
I think it's all of us pretty much every other day, to be honest with you.
Oh, goodness. But no, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much again just for taking the opportunity. Have you been over to Dublin much yourself?
I haven't been to Dublin myself for a long, long time. My wife went over there with her daughters not long ago and drank far too much Guinness. If there is such a thing as drinking far too much Guinness, I must say the thing that I'm hooked on at the moment is, and I know this is blasphemy, and I don't know why I'm saying this to somebody based in Ireland, they now do like a 0 alcohol Guinness.
Yeah, I know the one.
Pretty much like a real Guinness.
Yep.
And, you know, you can drink. I mean, Guinness is a good sipping beer anyway. It's a thing for a slow drink anyway. But yeah, this 0 alcohol Guinness. In fact, I almost poured myself one out so that I could surprise you. Cost a glass of Guinness while I was thinking. But no, I mean, I've always had a great time, and it's a wonderful city, Dublin. So, but do keep in touch anyway. I'd be really interested to see what you various people are getting up to. And I know, how long has it been established now?
We're only entering into our second year in February, so we're still very, very new. Prior to this, I was a program director for an animation course here in Dublin. But you see, we have a very strong animation industry, but when it came to comics, that was kind of often overlooked or wedged into animation. So I kind of decided to bite the bullet and set up the first academy to focus on comic books. But we call it sequential art as well, because sometimes people might decide they want to branch out back into animation or games or film. But the core skills are there, but we're very much comic book driven. And it's been great because, you know, we can sometimes have folks from all four corners of the world now coming into us, which is great. And technology has been a wonderful thing and making it happen. But also the physical space. We did a mini comic jam there a few weeks ago where we had, I think Craig and Amanda were there as well, you know, putting together a story and just seeing like what happens when you decide in the morning, we're going to break a story. By the end of the day, here's what we've made, and it's like print and bound and more like a zine, but it's a good experience and good fun. So,
no, I'm really, really pleased to help. They used to do a similar thing up at the university in Dundee.
I say good.
Well, they say to teach is to learn twice.
Exactly.
So, sometimes you'll do the sort of thing I've done this afternoon. I mean, because I'm a slightly older gentleman, I sometimes forget what I'm talking about at the end of the sentence. But, yeah.
You jinxed yourself.
I've done exactly that. But yeah, you surprise yourself. You know things you didn't know you knew by talking about it. You think, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's what I do. And I never realised that I did that. So it's good fun. And, yeah. If you can stand it, if you want me to come back another time, just drop me a line and I'll see what I can do.
No, absolutely. Thanks so much, Dave. Really appreciate this.
And when I do come to Dublin, you have to buy me a few pints of Guinness, okay?
Oh, we could do better than that. We'll take you down to the storehouse. We'll take you to the source.
Oh, well, there you go. Just leave me there. I'll be happy.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
All right, guys.
Thanks again to Dave for taking the time out again to speak to myself and the students and members of TASQ Art. If you've enjoyed what you heard here today, please consider liking and subscribing to Creator in Conversation. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, you can find us on Audible, you can find us on Spotify. So we cast a wide net and search for us there. If you can't find us on your favourite platform, feel free to let us know at info@tasqart.com. Ironically, when we recorded this particular episode with Mr. Gibbons, it was 1 year since we did our masterclass with Kevin Eastman. Now, of course, the podcast hasn't been running for a year. This was an episode, that we took from a pre-record of a masterclass. But it does happen the dates lined up that 1 year since we spoke to Kevin Eastman and we spoke with Mr. Gibbons. Really appreciate that. Particularly in the same year we spoke with Mr. Frank Miller as well, of course. Dave and Frank worked on Martha Washington. But on this particular occasion, some of you who follow us online be like, I didn't know we were going to speak with Dave Gibbons. Well, we decided to keep this one specifically to students and members of TASQ Art. So if you'd like to be kept in the loop of what's coming up and who we might be talking to, workshops, masterclasses, even live recordings of Creator in Conversation, please do consider becoming a member. And to find out more about that, visit tasqart.com. Search for us online at TASQArt, TASQART, or drop us an email at info@tasqart.com. Till next time, this has been a copyright production of Macaulay Consultancy 2025.